I'm Layla, and I'm June's little indie warrior. And this is my mom, Shannon, and that's my dad, Chad. Sit.
So it was the last week in January. It was really cold. There was no school, obviously, and Layla had a friend over, and the next morning she woke up and she threw up right away. And we were like, okay, Layla's got the flu. So the friend went home and Layla just kind of laid around and rested, and she was kind of in and out of being tired and nauseous, and so, but then all of a sudden it was, Dad, my head hurts. I've really got a bad headache. And so she would throw up, the headache would go away, and then it would keep coming back. And this went on for probably 3 or 4 days. And in that time we did an urgent care trip, and that helped for about 3 hours. And then all of a sudden the headache came back and the nausea came back, and Monday, Shannon took her to see our doctor, and basically led to a CT scan, which thankfully Shannon pushed to get that. And then that was when we discovered that she had a large mass on the right side of her head. And so just from there, it was a lot of questions and not knowing about what's next, what's going to happen. And so she was hospitalized on that Tuesday, and on Thursday she had her first brain surgery, which they removed the fluid from the cyst and as much of the tumor as they could, but they couldn't really know where to go from there until they got the pathology back. Well, by the time the pathology report came back, we had already been back in the hospital the following Sunday because all of her symptoms had returned. So they all came back, the nausea, the headache, the vomiting, and then that's when they broke the news to us when we were in the ER for the second time that she has a rare brain tumor called Anaplastic Ependymoma. And essentially what that means is very aggressive, very rare type of tumor, and it requires a heavy dose of surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. Over the course of the next 3 days, we had just an army of doctors and nurses coming through and telling us, okay, here's what we're going to do. And essentially what it came down to was they had to do surgery to again relieve all the pressure from the cyst that was in there. And then from there, they were going to install a little reservoir in her head and then a chemo port because we were going to start chemotherapy. So it was, I think it was like Thursday, February 21st, roughly. She had her, I believe at that time, was that the second? Must have been the second brain surgery. And then, then that night, they started chemotherapy. So she had a brain surgery in the morning.
Yep.
And then
chemo 3 rounds of chemo that night.
Yep. And so chemo went for 7 weeks. And then during that time, she also had another surgery in there. And then the big surgery was on Good Friday. And that was about a 12-hour surgery. So they started that, I think, right away in the morning, about 7:30. And then by the time she was back to the ICU, it was 8 o'clock at night or something like that. So after they do this surgery, while she's still asleep, they do an MRI, and they said we're 95% certain we've got it all, but we won't know for sure. We're gonna have to do another MRI, which turned out to be Easter Sunday. And then Easter Sunday, there was a little spot that was suspect, so they had to go back in on that following Monday, and that's when they fully think they got it all.
Can you tell us about your family a little bit? Who the members of your family and even maybe your fur family that you have?
Well, I have a sister that's 14, and then I have a brother out in California that's 22, and he's in the Marines. So, and then I have a lot of like close like family friends and stuff. Ooh, a face mask. I love face masks.
Oh, this is pretty. Look at this. This is really pretty.